Live an optimal life, through health and wellness. Be well, get well, and stay well.
All right, so welcome to the Zoom, everybody. It is my pleasure to be here with you tonight. My name's Brandon, and I rang a few of my friends that have been around horses probably the majority of their life. And it's going to be exciting for them to share some information. I've always been an animal lover, always had dogs and cats around. And I've had friends that had horses. And I know that they are passionate about their animals. And, you know, it's just amazing how connected we become to our animals that we love, and we want the best for them. And that's why this information tonight is, I think, super important to listen to and share, because I think we've got something to share tonight that can really, really make an impact on a lot of horses and the families, the human families that care for the horses. So that's why this information is fun to share tonight. We've got Debbie Crow with us tonight. That I met Debbie, I know back, 7 years ago, maybe even close to 8 or 9 years ago. And Debbie has a rich history around horses, and I'll give her a little bit more of an introduction. But we also have Holly Tomet on. I've known Holly now for a few years, and quickly realized where her passion lies with horses, because a lot of times when I was talking to her, she was at the board, the horse stables and the training facilities, and I quickly realized she was there quite a bit, so I knew she loved it. So these are the two ladies that are going to be sharing information with us tonight. Let me start with you, Debbie, and I give you a little bit of the guys listening, ladies and gentlemen watching here tonight. Debbie's been an equine physical therapist for over 40 years. And the first time I heard that, Debbie, I didn't know horses had physical therapists. So that was new to me. She's had the privilege of being around Olympic teams and working with some of the Olympic teams in competition, and over 25 years around the thoroughbred racing industry. Took her all over the place. I'm sure she could tell us a lot of stories about what she encountered there. But the fact of the matter is, as far as people I know, there is no one I know that has a deeper knowledge than Debbie does when it comes to horses, the physical strains that horses are under, and what she's been able to accomplish. So Debbie, it's my pleasure to have you on here. I'm excited for you to get to share. So we'll tell everybody briefly, what does a physical therapist do for horses?
Oh, well, if you just kind of think about what a person has done, a lot of times it's, for me, it's prevention. When you're at the track, things do happen. Most of the rehab doesn't really happen there. They go off to different facilities. So my job, when I was at the racetrack or at an event, was to keep them healthy and try and prevent injuries. And there's a lot of ways we can do that. 40 years ago, we weren't recognized as anything. I was one of the pioneers. It was like, you were crazy and you had to use your hands. And so you'd have to do a lot of work for free. You could show people how they could, increase their stride with just manipulating muscles, and they'd put you to the test, and they'd rake the shed row down and have them walk, and then you work on them and have them walk. Oh my gosh, this has got another 6 or 7 inches. So back then it was, you were the crazy person, and I kind of got used to being called that, but it's a real industry now, and it's massive.
Wow. And so what are some of the issues? I mean, being around thoroughbreds and the Olympic teams, what are the common issues that horses face? Whether it's competition horses, I know it's probably unique to each one, but what's some of the common things that horses face?
Well, it's always great if horses, get to be outside. Competition horses don't. That's probably one of the biggest struggles you have with a competitive horse. There are industries like jumpers where they turn them out at night, and that's awesome. But race horses, you can't put them in a field together. That just doesn't work for that industry. So you're dealing with an animal that probably gets out of the stall 22, 23 hours a day. Stays in the stall 22, 23 hours a day. So you're having to deal with that lack of circulation, which causes, legs to blow up, and they get grumpy, and if their feet hurt, there's certain things that you're going to have to do for that. So a competition horse is a little more difficult to take care of than that great guy that's getting to sit out in a field and get ridden maybe once every 4 or 5 days versus going 2 miles, 3 miles every morning.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we know that there's some common threads with horses as far as things that they're susceptible to. And you were introduced to Nrf2 activation about 8.5 years ago. And what did you learn, about oxidative? Did you know about oxidative stress and its role with horses? What have you learned over the last 8.5 years when it comes to this Nrf2 pathway and oxidative stress and how that relates to horses?
I just really dug in. I knew what oxidative stress was back when I learned it was called, free radical damage. So I had to research everything because I didn't believe anything. A complete stranger showed this to me. He had no idea that I was searching for something. But when he told me that, and he showed me the video and it said that it could reduce oxidative stress by 40%, I thought that can't be, because we know that leads to every illness. That's what I deal with all these horses. Why don't I know about this? Because it's new. That's why. At some point, things are new. But I just couldn't believe that this was true. And when I finally figured out it was true, it took me 12 hours sitting on a computer trying to disprove everything first. I got in the next day and I got horses on it right away because I knew what it was going to do for them.
So what did you start to experience? Like, did you have the like trial and error dosage? Like, what did you do? Like, did you give them 1 tablet, 2 tablets? What did you experience? What were some of the things you noticed?
I wanted to start with 1 because I wanted it was a trial thing for me. It was like, okay, what can 1 do for this 1,100 pound animal? And we saw a lot of changes, a lot of behavior changes, which is great because, when they don't feel good, they let you know. It's not like a person sucking it up or going to take an aspirin. So what was great is we were able to, really see their behavior change, which was massive for me. We saw, a lot of physical changes too. I had one of my horses that I was going to have to put down. He's still here 8.5 years later.
Wow.
That was pretty amazing. That was my first horse that I put it on, overnighted it to him from Florida. I was up in New York and I had the caretaker give it to him. And he had some serious issues. If you can't sweat, that's tough when you're in Florida. And I had 7 years of throwing the book at him, acupuncture, Chinese herbs, fans, blowers, misters, you name it. And I said, I'm not going to let him go through another summer. And so my first bottle got overnighted to him. And when I got the call that all the paraphernalia that he had to deal with was gone, except a box fan for him, just like everybody else, that was massive.
Wow. So what happens when a horse can't sweat?
Well, they breathe through their nose, so they breathe hard and fast through their nostrils. Can't get enough oxygen. You're wear and tear on all of the body, all the lungs. They're deprived of oxygen.
Does the heart rate go up?
Heart rate goes up. It's just a really bad spot to be in. I can't think of just a couple things that could be worse. And I'd already done everything that I knew. And so it was massive to see him here 8 years later, being happy, feels good, loves to get down and roll, loves his peppermints. Life is good for the boy,
Yeah.
And he's 25.
Yeah. Yeah. And so why do you think every horse should every horse be on Nrf2 activation? Should every horse take it? Why do you think what's the biggest reason why?
Yes and yes. Even really young horses, it depends on, they go through a lot of stress in their life too, being young, being weaned, moving around to different farms and locations. They go to horse sales. They move they go from their nice little comfortable spot to, say, a horse sale. They get shipped up 15 hours to Kentucky. They don't know anybody. They don't know they're humans. Everything is different. And I have a number of people that have horses that go to the sales on this, and it really helps horses settle. That was one of the things that I did some testing on was horses that just are really high strung and flighty. We can do a lot of things by activating Nrf2.
Sounds like some humans I know, high strung and flighty.
That's what made me look at it.
So you did a lot of research. There's a lot of people watching this that really don't know. Can you give us a real quick overview of what's going on with Nrf2 activation? Like how's it reducing oxidative stress? A lot of people watching don't know.
Well, we all have it. It's not going away. All of the mammals have it. And that's why I wanted to put them on it. And oxidative stress leads to every major illness that we have today. And it doesn't matter if it's for humans or if it's for our horses or our dogs. The older they get, the more damage they have. You know, Western medicine calls it aging and says there's nothing you can do about it. But that was key for me when I realized that this was real and we could reduce the cell damage that our animals have. And by doing that, we're going to give them a much higher quality of life.
So like, how's it different than a supplement? Because I know with the amount of money spent on horses, there has to be a lot of supplements out there. How's this different than a supplement?
Well, a supplement is just supplementing the body. I mean, we're guessing at we're not getting enough of whatever it is, but we're guessing at it. And there is, it's a multi-billion-dollar business, the supplementation world for horses. And most of it doesn't work. There's a few things that work, but it's not the majority. So when we have something on our hands that has science behind it, and the fact that when we take an Nrf2 activator, we're not guessing at the amount that we need. The body is producing what we need. And that's, I think, a real huge key. I did want to talk, you mentioned about dosing. Yeah. I did start with one with every horse because I wanted to see what it would do. If they are way older, it's kind of like horses are for every year of a human life, it's 7 years for a horse. So my 25-year-old is like 175. So guess what? He gets 2. So you just have to kind of gauge, what's going on. How old are they really? Are they getting out and getting exercise? Are they doing a stressful job? I don't want to
interrupt you, but just as they age, doesn't the oxidative stress accumulate? It doesn't stay the same, right? As they age, it accumulates.
Right. And that's why we see so many times in people and horses, the older we get is when we get sicker. So if we can, shorten that up and start reducing it by 40% in just 30 days, we can start getting a handling on it. Of course, the longer we take an activator, the more the percentage goes up, is higher than 40%, 50%, 60%. So why wouldn't anyone want to take the cell damage out? Because when we do have an injury or we have a problem that comes up, if your body is as well as it can be, it's going to handle that injury, that insult, whatever it is, way better than if you've got an accumulation of damaged cells.
Yeah. So the last question for you is, after 8.5 years, what still excites you? What still blows you away about what you've seen with this product in horses?
Everything. I mean, because it's their skin, it's their hair, it's their attitude. It's that people get to have their animals longer. Like I said, I've had this one 23 years. He's 25 years old. And this last 8 years was just been, a blessing. The fact that we can have healthy animals. And I've had a number of other older animals too, dogs that are 20 and 21 that were activated, and they were fine. They ran everywhere they went. And I think that's what I love, is quality of life for our animals.
That's great. Well, thank you for being on here tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And I know you love your horses, and she's got so much knowledge that she could share with you. And, we wish we could get on here and tell you what's really going on. We're very limited to what we can say at times for what's really going on. But thank you for being on here, Debbie. Really appreciate it.
Can I just add one thing where maybe people could go do their own research?
Sure.
I'm a big fan of PubMed.gov and Scholar.Google. And if a lot of people don't know this, but you can put in equine oxidative stress. I'm sure all of you have researched oxidative stress, but if you put in equine oxidative stress at PubMed, there's 450 studies. And if you go to Google, Scholar.Google, there's 35,000 studies on horses and oxidative stress. And it is attached to everything, every kind of illness that the horses have. And you can get a wealth of information there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on tonight.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Yep. I'll see you soon. So Holly Tomlin, if you'll, your camera's on. So let me give Holly a little introduction. As I said, I met Holly several years ago, and she has a nice big facility where they board and train horses. I think it's over 60 stalls, isn't it, Holly?
Sure. Yeah, 63 stalls.
Wow. So I know it's a passion for you. I know you love it. It's how long have you been riding? Since what age did you get on your first horse?
I was riding before I was walking. So you'd have to ask my mom, but I was pretty darn young when I started riding.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you have a stall now, so you're caring for animals, or there's animals, plenty of animals there. You got your own. How many horses do you have now that you take care of?
So we own 7 personally, but we have over 60 on the property. So we have clients' horses here. We have several trainers that work in our barn, everything from dressage to eventing, hunter jumpers, quarter horses, a little bit of everything here. So it's definitely, it keeps us busy. We have a full-time manager. Thank the Lord. She's amazing. So I don't have to do all of the work out there. We have an amazing staff. So thankful for that.
So when you were introduced to, Nrf2 activation and the products, how soon was it before you started, thinking maybe this should go in the horses? What was your process? Like, what research did you do? What questions did you ask before you put it in the horse's mouth?
Yeah, so I was the diehard skeptic, right? So I tried it finally after about a year. I finally started taking the products myself, and I had such amazing results that I knew within the first month that I was going to have to get this into our horses, into our dog. I wanted them to feel like I was feeling. And, they're athletes. And so I love all that Debbie said. I can relate. We've got an older gelding. Reminds me of the guy she's talking about that she's had forever. And I just knew that what we expect of them from an athletic level and the performance we require, if it could help me feel the way I was feeling, I knew we needed to get it into them as well. So that's what got me thinking. And like Debbie said, there's so much research out there, so many studies. I listened to other vets talking about it, and it was a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer for me.
So tell us a little bit about what you've experienced. Like, what is you and I talked before this, there's some common things that you've seen that horses deal with. And what are some of the things that before knowing this information kind of frustrated you? What were some of the issues that were there that you just really didn't have answers for?
I wouldn't say there weren't answers. They were just answers that maybe I didn't like. I love to approach things from a more holistic point of view if I can. So every time we had a horse that had to rely on some kind of pharmaceutical, that was a loss for me. I was very frustrated by that. And so because in our family, we try to address things more natural, I was constantly trying to find natural remedies for our horses. We do have a holistic vet that lives near us. And so she was always very helpful. In fact, she's a distributor with the company, actually, because her belief grew as soon as she saw the information, she was on board. But, we have just joint pain and behavior issues, ulcers, colic, horses that had to live on having their joints injected, daily doses of pain meds. Those come with side effects. So that's not sticking a needle in a joint once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year is not optimal. And so if we could avoid it, which now thankfully we've been able to with several horses now for a couple years, which has been amazing.
What's some of the things that with your own personal horses? I mean, you know your horses better than anybody. So what's some of the things that you've been able to see once they started taking the product?
Yeah, it was funny because you said, hey, can you highlight a couple stories? And I was like, where do I start? Because not just my own horses, but, clients' horses and friends' horses, people on my team who are equine professionals. And the stories are so many that I didn't know where to start. But personally, for me, my guinea pig was my older gelding, which is why I could relate to what Debbie was saying. He's almost 30 years old. He's a diehard show horse. Always loved his job, but he has the worst joints in his back legs. I've never seen x-rays as bad as this horse's x-rays are. And I've looked at a lot of x-rays. They're horrible. And he was very stoic. He kept working and doing his job, but he finally did retire. And he was one of those living on daily pain medicine, and just to get around in a way that didn't break my heart to watch him in some stiffness and lameness and so on. So he was my first guy that I tried on it. And I did start with 2 a day because he is older. I had read up on it and I thought I'm just going to load him up. So he gets 1 Nrf2 in the morning and 1 at night. And I saw someone ask on here, not to sidetrack, but how we dose it to them. I personally crush ours up for our horses because I'm not personally feeding them. We're not a 5-stall barn where we're out there, personally feeding my horses. So because our staff is doing it, I want to make sure they're getting it in their grain. So we don't just drop it in the bucket or hand feed it. We actually crush it up. But I did start him on 2. And what I did before I started him on that, though, is we did take him off all the pain meds he was on for about 2 weeks. I wanted to get a baseline for him and assess his activity and how he was doing. And he was okay, but you could tell that he was no longer on his meds. And I would say within probably 2 weeks, I remember I made a video of him. I was in our golf cart on the farm and I was kind of ponying him next to the cart. He's almost 30 years old and he just starts loping next to the golf cart and tossing his head. And I was like, I put it on Facebook. I was like, wow, this is activation right here. Like it blew my mind because I hadn't seen him feel that good in a really long time. And that was without any pharmaceuticals. That was just with the Nrf2. He's been going now for 2 years like that. So that was amazing.
That's awesome. I know we talked a little bit earlier about some specific issues that you've seen that horses have to deal with. And I reached out to the compliance department to see if we could talk about some of them. So I know there's some joints that some of the horses have issues with. And so what have you seen the product do for some of those horses?
Yeah, so we had, a mare in the barn, a client's horse who had to have her hocks injected twice a year. Very typical for a show horse. That's one of the joints that just tends to get a lot of wear and tear. And they started her on just the Nrf2. And that was 2 years ago. And they've never injected her since. They couldn't believe it because it was just a routine. Every 6 months, she had her hocks injected. And she's a quarter horse. She does Western pleasure and all different kinds of events. And she's still on it. They will not take her off it. They've had so much success. The other thing is like metabolic issues. So I've had a couple horses. One is my sister's, one is another client's, and metabolic issues where they don't shed their hair coat. They just don't thrive well at all. And within weeks, hair coats are shedding, joint pain is lessened. And that alone was for my sister's pony. It was for my niece's pony, actually. And she's little, so she just gets 1 pill a day and she thrives on 1 pill a day and no other meds. So there are pharmaceuticals for this condition, and they haven't had to go back on them. Both horses have been off it. So, yeah, mostly it's joint pain. We had, can I tell you one more story that actually really kind of blew my mind?
Sure. And
again, this wasn't in my barn. This was a friend of mine, but there was a 3-year-old horse off the track, a racehorse, and they had found a mass in his hip area internally. And the vets wanted to put him down. He was what we call 3-legged lame. For us horse people, we know what that means. And he was in a pretty bad state. And the vets just put him on some meds. Nothing was working. He had that internal mass, and the owners didn't want to put him down. Nothing was working, but they decided to try the Nrf2 because the owner of the barn, another friend of mine, had huge success with other horses. So she knew, she said, let's at least try this. And that horse, he was, I'm looking at some notes here because I had a timeline for it. After 2 weeks, the horse was able to walk what we would call sound. I mean, not visibly lame anymore. And it was 3 weeks later, the mass actually started to shrink and it actually traveled through his body a little bit. It ended up coming out externally in the groin area, kind of as an abscess. And that horse recovered and was actually back on the track. I think it was in like 6 weeks.
Wow.
And that was a case where the vets had kind of, I love our vets, but I mean, they didn't know what else to do for him. Yeah. And he was in so much pain. And the fact that he made such a quick turn on recovery and went back to work as a 3-year-old on the track was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that's insane. So you ladies both have been around horses 30, 40 years or so. In all of that time, was there ever anything, this is an open question for both of you as we close up the presentation tonight, this information. Is this, in your opinion, like the biggest breakthrough you've seen for horses prior to?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So many different things.
And Debbie, you've seen it all. Like at your level with the thoroughbreds, I mean, you guys raced, I think, at the highest level, right? Are we talking like the big races?
Breeders' Cup, Kentucky Derby,
The big races, like is I don't know a bigger race. I mean, I may be in the dark, but anyway, the big races. And this is the biggest breakthrough you've seen for horses.
It's just incredible. That's why it was so hard for me to believe it. And also a part of it was my fault. I mean, just why don't I know about it? Because I kind of pioneered a lot of different therapies, and it was like, why don't I know about this? And when you realized that this was real, you knew this is the biggest thing you've ever seen.
And you feel the same way, Holly?
I do. And on top of just the fact that it can come from more of a holistic approach, which I love and prefer, the cost effectiveness. I just had a customer on the products herself, have great results, and had all her horses in her own barn and all of these supplements. And she said, for what I'm paying and hoping they're working, she said, it's a no-brainer for her too. And so she made the switch, and now all of her horses are just on the Nrf2. She's pulled them up, everything else, and it's saving her money. So
yeah, for those of you that don't know, in the United States, one bottle, 30 tablets is $49. And that's with the shipping. In some of the other folks that may watch this around the world in English speaking countries, there's a little bit of a conversion rate for the product, but I know when it comes to horses, that's cheap.
yeah, that's a deal.
That's super cheap. Well, thank you ladies for being on here. I know both of you, before you go though, I know both of you saw this information and decided you wanted to share it. And there is an opportunity for every one of you guys watching this tonight to do the same thing, to share that. You're going to share this information. If you love your horses and you love animals, you're going to share this. And so why don't you both kind of comment a little bit about how you're sharing this and the enjoyment you're getting from sharing it. Holly, why don't you go first and we end with Debbie?
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, I want to say that we've shared this information with so many equine professionals, including most of our vets in the area. And over the years, when they see the information, you know, I'm a layperson. I'm not a trainer. I'm not a medical professional. So for me to be able to share this with a vet and have them go, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I've had one vet not actually just jump right on board. Every other medical professional that we've shared this with sees it for what it is, thankfully. And so now in our area here in Michigan, the word's getting out. And so sharing it, whether it's with clients, with medical professionals, not only is it a wonderful business and a great team to be part of, it's just you're changing not just people's lives, but now we see horses' lives, my dog, other people's dogs. So it's amazing. I'm blessed to be part of it.
That's awesome. What about you, Debbie? How are you sharing it? What have you seen?
You know, I really stick with the science because I understand that a lot of the medical professionals I was around, there's all kinds of tales that go out about, you know, different products in the horse world, and most of them don't work. And it got, I think, a lot easier when about 5 to 6 years ago, there were so many different studies coming out and they had started to hear about Nrf2 a little bit. And so I stick with the science and being able to take people to where they can see what the study was, who the university was, what who the doctor was that did the study. That was just more believable for me. And I try and keep it compliant, and man, it's really hard to do sometimes. So I try and use the science the most that I can.
Yeah, I know. Even with our own animals, we had a black lab that just had tremendous results. And, you know, I just tell people, just come over and take a look. Just come take a look and tell me if he looks like he's this age. That's all you need to know, right? And so thank you guys for being on here tonight. For all of you guests that were here, I know you love horses. Get your horses on this. And if you love horses, I think once you see what happens for your horses, you're going to start sharing it. So get back with the person that put you on here, because there is a program that easily allows you to share this information so that you can help a lot of other people with their horses. It's an expensive thing to have horses, and so offsetting that expense is always a good thing, and we think we can do that. These two ladies have definitely done that. And I love that they've been able to do that, doing something they love. So thank you guys for being on here. If you have more questions for the guests that were on, just get with the person that put you on here. They can share some more stories. They can share some more details, some more science. We wanted to keep it brief tonight, but we wanted to give you some real experts to hear from that have helped a lot of horses. So thank you guys. You guys have a great night, and let's go help some horses.
Thank you so much, Brandon.
Thanks for watching, and remember, one change can have an enormous effect. Remember to subscribe, hit the bell and the like, and we'll see you next time on Love to Live.